The red dust of Mars swirled around the training grounds as Commander Chen watched the Valdrine observers arrive. Their ship landed with perfect precision, sending up clouds of rust-colored particles that caught the morning light. Chen had been expecting them for weeks. Everyone in the human military had heard about this visit. The Valdrine were here to judge whether humans were worthy of joining the Galactic Defense Coalition. The Valdrine were tall, nearly 8 feet on average, with sleek silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and dark, positioned on the sides of their heads like a predator bird. They moved with grace and confidence, the kind that came from knowing they were superior. The lead Valdrine, Commander Thexalor, stepped forward and looked down at Chen with barely hidden amusement. "So these are the famous humans," Thexalor said in perfect English, though his translator device made his voice sound mechanical. "We have heard much about your species. Today we will see if any of it is true." Chen saluted formally. "Welcome to Mars Training Facility 7. We're ready to begin when you are." The exercise was simple. Human soldiers and Valdrine soldiers would run through combat drills together. They would practice shooting, tactical movement, and target identification. The Valdrine would watch how humans performed under pressure. It was supposed to be a chance for humanity to prove itself. What the Valdrine didn't know was that humans were already aware of what they would find on this base. Strange readings had been detected for 3 days. Movement where there should be none. Cold spots in heated buildings. Equipment moved during the night. Chen had called in specialists, and they had confirmed his suspicions. They were not alone on this base. The first drill began. 20 human soldiers lined up across from 20 Valdrine soldiers. Targets appeared downrange, holographic projections mixed with physical dummies. The Valdrine opened fire first, their weapons humming with energy. Every shot hit perfectly. The holograms flickered and died. The physical targets exploded into fragments. Not a single miss. Then the humans fired. But something seemed wrong immediately. The human soldiers aimed at different angles. Some fired at empty spaces between targets. Others shot at coordinates that appeared to have nothing there at all. Their bullets hit dirt, rocks, and air. The actual targets remained standing. Thexalor's mandibles clicked together in what Chen had learned was Valdrine laughter. "Are your soldiers blind, Commander? The targets are clearly marked. Perhaps humans need better training equipment." Chen said nothing. He simply watched as his soldiers continued to fire. Private Jackson, a young woman with sharp eyes, emptied an entire magazine into a space 5 feet to the left of a target dummy. Sergeant Williams shot at the ceiling of the training range. Corporal Rodriguez fired repeatedly at the ground near his own feet. The Valdrine observers recorded everything. Chen could see them sharing looks, their mandibles clicking with amusement. One of them spoke in their own language, and the others made sounds that could only be laughter. The translator didn't bother converting it. Mockery sounded the same in any language. "Perhaps," another Valdrine officer said loudly, "humans are not ready for coalition membership. They cannot even hit stationary targets. How would they fight in actual combat?" The human soldiers heard every word. Chen saw their jaws tighten and their grips on their weapons strengthen. But they were professionals. They followed orders, and their orders were to continue the exercise exactly as planned. The second drill was worse. The teams moved through an urban combat simulation, clearing buildings and identifying threats. The Valdrine moved like water, smooth and efficient. They spotted every threat within seconds and eliminated them with precision. Their scores were perfect. The humans seemed to stumble through the same course. They fired at walls. They shot through doorways that led to empty rooms. They called out target coordinates that made no sense. Lieutenant Davis, one of Chen's best tactical officers, spent 30 seconds firing continuously at a blank concrete wall. Thexalor approached Chen as the drill ended. "Commander, I must speak honestly. This is embarrassing. Your soldiers are wasting ammunition on nothing. They ignore clear threats and shoot at empty air. I have seen civilian security forces with better discipline than this." Chen met the Valdrine's dark eyes. My soldiers are doing exactly what they're trained to do. Trained to miss? Thexalor's mandibles clicked rapidly now. Trained to be incompetent? Commander Chen, the coalition has standards. We cannot accept members who would be a liability in actual combat situations. The final drill was a live fire exercise in the canyons west of the base. This time, the Valdrine would observe from a safe distance, while humans ran the course alone. Chen agreed to this readily, perhaps too readily. Thexalor noticed but said nothing. The human teams moved through the canyon. Overhead drones recorded everything. The Valdrine watched on screens inside their observation post. And once again, the humans appeared to shoot at nothing. They fired into shadows. They aimed at empty rock faces. They called out contacts that didn't exist on any Valdrine sensor. But something else happened during this drill. In several places where humans had fired those wasted shots, equipment malfunctions occurred in the Valdrine observation post. Screens flickered. Sensors went offline briefly. One Valdrine officer reported feeling suddenly cold, though the environmental controls showed normal temperature. None of them connected these events to the human gunfire. They were too busy laughing. When the exercise ended, Thexalor delivered his judgment publicly. The human and Valdrine forces assembled in the main hangar. The Valdrine commander stood on a platform, his voice amplified for all to hear. I have completed my assessment of human military capabilities, he announced. It is my recommendation to the Coalition Council that humanity be denied membership at this time. Your soldiers lack basic competence. They cannot hit targets that are clearly visible. They waste resources shooting at ghosts. You are blind primitives playing at war. The Valdrine officers behind him made their clicking laughter sound. Some of the younger Valdrine soldiers joined in. It echoed through the hangar. Chen stepped forward. His face showed no emotion. Is that your final assessment, Commander? It is. Perhaps in another century, when humans have evolved better eyesight and basic military discipline, you may reapply. Until then, you are not ready for the coalition. Chen nodded slowly. We'll see. There was something in those two words that made Thexalor pause. A certainty, a confidence that didn't match the performance he had just witnessed. But the Valdrine commander dismissed it. Humans were clearly delusional about their own abilities. It was almost sad. The Valdrine returned to their ship and departed that evening. They would file their report and humanity would be rejected. Another primitive species not ready for the galactic stage. Chen watched them go. Around him, his soldiers stood in formation. No one spoke. No one needed to. They had all seen the same things during the exercises. The shadows that moved wrong. The cold spots that followed certain paths. The feeling of being watched by something that wasn't quite there. Private Jackson approached Chen quietly. Sir, should we have told them? Chen shook his head. They wouldn't have believed us. Some things you have to see for yourself. They're going to find out the hard way, Sergeant Williams added. Chen looked up at the darkening Martian sky where the Valdrine ship had vanished. Yes, they will. And when they do, they'll understand why we were shooting. We weren't missing soldiers. We never miss. The soldiers exchanged glances. They had all felt it, the presence of something else on the base, something the Valdrine couldn't detect with all their advanced sensors and technology, something that existed just outside the range of Valdrine perception. But humans could see it. Humans had always been able to see it. Chen dismissed his troops and walked to his office. He had reports to file and preparations to make, because he knew what was coming. The Valdrine had been scanned by the things humans had been shooting at. Those creatures now knew where the Valdrine came from. They knew where to find more prey. And the Valdrine had no idea they were being hunted. 3 weeks passed after the training exercise on Mars. Commander Chen received the official notice from the Galactic Defense Coalition. Humanity's application had been rejected. The report cited insufficient combat readiness and lack of basic military competence. Chen filed it away and continued his work. Then the messages started coming from Valdrine space. The first report was brief. A mining facility on Keshor Prime had experienced equipment failures. Not unusual. Machines broke down. But then miners started disappearing. Security teams found empty corridors and abandoned equipment. The miners simply vanished, leaving behind only their tools and personal items. The second report came 3 days later. A residential complex reported similar incidents. Families heard strange sounds at night. Children claimed to see shadows that moved on their own. Then an entire family disappeared from a locked apartment. The door remained sealed from the inside. No windows were broken. They were simply gone. By the end of the second week, Keshor Prime was in crisis. 17 people had vanished. Security footage showed nothing unusual. Sensors detected no intruders. Environmental systems registered no anomalies. Yet soldiers on patrol would round a corner and never return. Weapons would discharge in empty rooms. Structures would collapse despite engineering reports showing they were sound. Thexilor was commanding the garrison on Keshor Prime. He increased patrols. He upgraded every sensor on the planet. He brought in the best security specialists the Valdrine had. Nothing worked. The disappearances continued, the casualties mounted, and no one could see what was causing it. The Valdrine military installed cameras everywhere. They reviewed thousands of hours of footage. They enhanced every pixel, analyzed every shadow, studied every frame. Nothing appeared on the recordings. Right up until the moment someone vanished, everything looked completely normal. 1 second, a Valdrine would be walking down a corridor. The next second, they were gone. No flash of light, no signs of struggle, just gone. Weapons fire became common at night. Soldiers would discharge their rifles at nothing, screaming that something was attacking them. Other soldiers would rush to help and find their comrades dead, bearing injuries that looked like they came from massive claws. But no creature appeared on any scanner. No biological traces were found. No tracks, no evidence of any physical attacker. The Valdrine scientists proposed theories. Perhaps it was a native life form that existed in a spectrum they couldn't detect. Perhaps it was a new form of matter. Perhaps it was something from another dimension. They set up experimental sensors across the entire colony. They monitored every possible wavelength of light and energy. They found nothing. Thexilor grew desperate. The colony was dying. Thousands of Valdrine were evacuating, fleeing a threat they couldn't identify. The military was powerless. The greatest technology in the Valdrine arsenal was useless against an invisible enemy. That's when Thexilor made the call to Earth. Captain Rivera received the transmission at the human diplomatic station. She was humanity's primary military liaison with the Valdrine. She had been expecting this call, though perhaps not so soon. The face on her screen showed Thexilor looking exhausted and angry. "Captain Rivera," he began formally, "I am contacting you regarding a matter of planetary security." "How can humanity help, Commander?" Rivera kept her expression neutral. Thexilor's mandibles clenched. Even through the communication delay, Rivera could see how much this cost him. "We have reason to believe that Earth may be conducting covert operations on Valdrine worlds. Specifically, that humans may be using primitive stealth technology to sabotage our colony on Keshor Prime." Rivera raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation, Commander. What evidence do you have?" "Strange occurrences began shortly after your forces trained on Mars. Equipment failures, disappearances, deaths that leave no forensic evidence. It has all the hallmarks of a sabotage campaign. I am calling to demand that Earth cease these activities immediately." Rivera leaned back in her chair. She studied Thexilor carefully. She could see the fear in his eyes, hidden beneath the anger. "Commander, I can assure you that Earth has no personnel on Keshor Prime and has conducted no operations in Valdrine space. What you're experiencing has nothing to do with human activity." "Then explain what is happening." Thexilor's voice rose. Explain how my soldiers are dying from invisible attacks. Explain why nothing shows up on our sensors. Rivera was quiet for a moment. Then she asked a simple question. Have you checked the infrared spectrum below 200 nanometers? Texelor froze. What? The lower infrared spectrum, below 200 nanometers. Have you scanned for activity in that range? That range is irrelevant, Texelor said. No known technology operates there. No biological life forms register in that spectrum. Our species cannot perceive light at those wavelengths. Why would we scan there? Rivera's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes changed. Commander Thexilor, you're not alone on that world. You never were. The silence stretched between them. Thexilor stared at the screen. What are you saying? I'm saying that what happened on Mars during our training exercise wasn't incompetence. My soldiers were engaging targets that your sensors couldn't detect. Targets that exist in a visual spectrum your species doesn't perceive. That's impossible. Is it? Rivera pulled up a file on her display. Let me ask you something. When your soldiers discharge their weapons at empty air, where are they aiming? Thexilor pulled up his own records. He scanned through dozens of incident reports. Security footage showed Valdrine soldiers firing wildly at nothing. But as he looked closer, he noticed something. They weren't firing randomly. They were tracking something. Their weapons followed a path, aimed at a point, tracked movement. Movement of something that wasn't there. They're aiming at something, he said slowly. Yes, something they can sense but cannot see. Your soldiers' instincts are telling them there's a threat, but your eyes and sensors can't confirm it, so you think they're panicking or imagining things. But what could it be? What exists outside our perceptual range? Rivera leaned forward. Commander, humanity has known about these creatures for a very long time. We call them phase wraiths. They exist partially in our dimension and partially in another. They're visible in certain spectrums of light, particularly in the lower infrared and ultraviolet ranges. Most species in the galaxy can't see those ranges. Humans can. Thexilor felt cold. You're saying these creatures are on my world right now? Yes, and they've been there for a while, possibly years. They feed on biological life. They prefer intelligent species. They're patient hunters. They study their prey, learn patterns, and strike when victims are isolated. Why didn't you tell us about this? Thexilor's voice shook with fury. Why didn't you warn the coalition? Would you have believed us? Rivera asked quietly. 3 weeks ago, you called us incompetent primitives because we were shooting at things you couldn't see. You rejected our application to the coalition because we were firing at empty space. If we had told you about phase wraiths then, what would you have said? Thexilor had no answer. She was right. He would have dismissed it as superstition or lies. Even now, part of him wanted to deny it. But his soldiers were dying. His people were disappearing. And nothing else made sense. How many are on my world? He finally asked. We'd need to send a team to assess. But based on the casualty reports you've described, I'd estimate at least 30 to 40 individuals, maybe more. They hunt in packs once they've established a territory. Can you kill them? Yes, humans have been hunting phase wraiths for centuries. We have weapons designed specifically for them. We have tactics and strategies. We know how they think and how they move. Thexilor closed his eyes. The greatest military force in the Valdrine Consortium was helpless against an enemy they couldn't see. But humans, primitive humans who had been rejected from the coalition, could see and fight these creatures. The irony was almost painful. Will you help us? He asked. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Rivera nodded. I'll have a tactical team ready to deploy within 6 hours. But Commander, you need to understand something. This situation is bigger than you realize. Phase wraiths don't stay in one place. If they're on Keshor Prime, they may be on other Valdrine worlds too. This might not be an isolated incident. How is that possible? How could they infest multiple worlds without anyone noticing? Because you couldn't see them. How many unexplained disappearances has the Valdrine Consortium had over the years? How many mysterious accidents? How many deaths attributed to equipment failures or natural causes that never quite made sense? Vexilor felt his blood run cold. He thought about the reports he'd seen over his career. Strange incidents on remote outposts, colonies that failed for unknown reasons, ships that went silent without distress calls, deaths that couldn't be explained. Everyone had assumed they were just the normal tragedies of space colonization. But what if they weren't? What if something had been hunting his people for decades? What if the Valdrine had been prey this entire time and never knew it? "Send your team," Thexilor said quietly. "I'll prepare my forces to assist them however we can." "Understood. Commander, one more thing. My team will be shooting at things you can't see. Try not to doubt them this time." The transmission ended. Thexilor sat in his office, staring at the blank screen. Around him, his world was under siege by an enemy that existed just beyond his ability to perceive. And the only species that could help was the one he had mocked just weeks before. He remembered Chen's words on Mars. "We'll see." The human commander had known. They had all known. Humans had been fighting phase wraiths, while the rest of the galaxy remained blissfully unaware. Thexilor stood and walked to the window. Outside, his colony looked peaceful in the fading light. But now he knew better. Something was out there. Something invisible, patient, and hungry. It had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, killing his people, while they searched blindly for an enemy they could never find. The Valdrine had called humans incompetent for shooting at ghosts. But the humans had been right all along. They weren't missing. They were fighting a war no one else even knew existed. The human transport ship touched down on Keshor Prime at dawn. Thexilor stood on the landing pad with his senior officers, watching as the loading ramp descended. He didn't know what to expect. Perhaps a large force of heavily armed soldiers. Perhaps specialized vehicles and equipment. What emerged was a team of 12 humans carrying standard rifles and wearing simple combat gear. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led the team down the ramp. She was small compared to the Valdrine, barely reaching Thexilor's chest. She wore dark glasses even though the sun was still low on the horizon. The rest of her team wore similar eye protection. Each human moved with quiet confidence, scanning the area constantly. "Commander Thexilor," Kim said, offering a salute. "Lieutenant Kim, Earth Tactical Response Unit 7. We're here to help." 12 soldiers, Thexilor said, unable to keep the doubt from his voice. "I have 3,000 troops on this planet. How can 12 humans make a difference?" Kim smiled slightly. "Your 3,000 troops can't see the enemy, Commander. My 12 can. That makes all the difference." She pulled a device from her belt and held it up. It looked like a simple scanner, the kind any military unit might carry, but when she activated it, the display showed patterns of heat and movement that Thexilor's own sensors had never detected. Shapes moved across the screen. Large shapes, predatory shapes. They circled the landing pad at a distance, watching. "How many are there?" Thexilor asked, staring at the screen. "Around this position? 5, maybe 6. They're curious about us. They've never encountered humans before." Kim adjusted her glasses. "These aren't regular sunglasses, Commander. They're spectrum filters. They allow me to see into the infrared and ultraviolet ranges more clearly. Every member of my team has them." She handed the scanner to Thexilor. He looked at the display and felt his skin crawl. The creatures were huge, at least the size of a Valdrine, with long limbs that ended in what looked like claws. They moved in jerking, unnatural motions, like insects. One of them was less than 50 meters away, crouched on top of a building, watching the landing pad. "Why aren't they attacking?" Thexilor asked. "Because they're smart. They study new threats before engaging. They've probably been watching your forces for weeks, learning patterns, identifying weaknesses. But we're different. We're something they haven't seen before. Kim turned to her team and began issuing orders in calm, clear tones. The soldiers spread out into a defensive formation. Each one moved to a position that looked random to Thexalor, but he noticed they were all facing directions where the scanner showed creatures lurking. "Private Torres," Kim said. "Target on the warehouse roof, 30 meters north. You see it?" A young human soldier nodded. "Got it, Lieutenant. Clear shot. Take it when ready." Torres raised his rifle smoothly. To Thexalor, he was aiming at empty air. The warehouse roof showed nothing on visual scans, nothing on thermal scans, nothing on any sensor the Valdrine possessed. But Torres didn't hesitate. He breathed out slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. Thexalor saw nothing hit, no spark, no impact. The bullet seemed to disappear into empty space. Then something appeared. It flickered into visibility for just a moment. A horrible creature with too many joints and a mouth full of crystalline teeth. It screamed, a sound that hurt Thexalor's ears, and fell from the roof. When it hit the ground, it vanished again. "Confirmed kill," Torres reported. "Target down." The other creatures scattered. Kim watched them on her scanner. "They're retreating. They didn't expect us to see them. That gives us an advantage, but it won't last long. They'll adapt." She turned to Thexalor. "Commander, I need a complete map of your colony. I need to know where the disappearances occurred, where attacks happened, and where your people report feeling unsafe. These creatures establish hunting territories. If we can map their patterns, we can find their nest." Thexalor provided everything she requested. Over the next hour, Kim and her team studied the data. They marked locations on a holographic map of the colony. Red dots appeared where people had vanished. Yellow dots showed where attacks had occurred. Blue dots indicated areas where colonists reported strange sensations or sounds. A pattern emerged. The attacks radiated from a central location, an abandoned industrial complex on the western edge of the colony. The building had been shut down months ago due to equipment failures. Workers had reported feeling watched. Several had requested transfers. Eventually, the facility was closed and forgotten. "That's their nest," Kim said with certainty. "They moved in when your people abandoned it. Perfect shelter, close to populated areas, multiple escape routes. Classic phase wraith behavior." "How do we kill them?" Thexalor asked. "We go in and clear them out, but it won't be easy. They'll defend their territory, and in an enclosed space, they have every advantage." Kim's team prepared for the assault. They checked their weapons, loaded specialized ammunition, and synchronized their communication devices. Thexalor offered to send his soldiers with them, but Kim politely declined. "Your soldiers are brave, Commander, but they can't see the enemy. They'd be liabilities in close combat. We need to move fast and shoot accurately. We can't do that if we're worrying about friendly fire." Thexalor felt frustrated, but he understood. Still, he insisted on accompanying the team himself. "I need to see this with my own eyes, or at least see what you see." Kim considered this, then nodded. "Stay close to me. Don't fire your weapon. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" "Understood." The team moved toward the industrial complex. They traveled on foot, moving quickly through streets and alleyways. Kim carried her scanner in one hand and her rifle in the other. Several times she raised her fist, signaling the team to stop. Each time soldiers would aim at empty spaces and fire. Each time Thexalor would see nothing until the moment something flickered into visibility, screaming and dying. "How do you see them without the scanner?" Thexalor asked. Kim tapped her glasses. "These help, but honestly, we don't always need them. Human eyes naturally see into the lower infrared and upper ultraviolet ranges. Not as clearly as visible light, but enough. We evolved that way. It helped our ancestors hunt at dawn and dusk when most prey animals thought they were hidden in dim light." "So you can actually see these creatures? Right now?" "Yes. They look like shadows with too many edges, shapes that don't quite fit properly into three-dimensional space. They move wrong. Once you know what to look for, they're obvious. They reach the industrial complex. The building loomed above them, dark and silent. Broken windows stared down like empty eyes. The main entrance hung open, the door twisted off its hinges. Kim studied her scanner. 12 signatures inside. No, wait, 15. 3 just moved into position near the entrance. They know we're here. She turned to her team. Standard nest clearing procedure. Teams of 3. Torres, Williams, you're with me. Hassan, take the second team left. Rodriguez, take the third team right. We meet in the center. Kill anything that moves. These things don't negotiate, and they don't surrender. The teams moved in. Thexalor followed Kim's group, staying close as instructed. Inside, the building was dark. Emergency lighting had failed long ago. Kim pulled out a flashlight, but it cast strange, purple-tinted light. Ultraviolet, Thexalor realized. She was illuminating the spectrum where the creatures existed. In that light, Thexalor saw them. They clung to walls and ceilings. They crouched in corners. They were everywhere. Horrible things that hurt to look at, with bodies that seemed to fold in directions that shouldn't exist. There were far more than 15. The scanner had only detected the closest ones. Dozens more filled the building. Contact! Torres shouted. He fired at something dropping from the ceiling. The creature screamed and fell. Williams pivoted and shot another that was crawling along the wall. Kim fired 3 rounds into a doorway where something massive was emerging. The building erupted with screams. The phase wraiths attacked from every direction, but the humans were ready. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. They covered each other. They called out targets. They fired with impossible accuracy at enemies Thexalor could barely perceive even in the ultraviolet light. A creature lunged at Thexalor from the shadows. He froze, unable to see it clearly enough to defend himself. Kim spun and put 3 bullets into it before it covered half the distance. It collapsed at Thexalor's feet, flickering between visibility and invisibility as it died. "Stay focused, Commander," Kim said calmly. She reloaded her rifle without looking, her eyes scanning for the next threat. "We're not done yet." They pushed deeper into the building. Bodies littered the floor, phase wraith corpses that flickered in and out of sight. The creatures fought desperately, but they had never faced an enemy that could see them before. They had never been the hunted instead of the hunters. In the center of the building, they found the nest. It was a mass of organic material, sticky and pulsing with unnatural light. Eggs filled the chamber, each one containing a developing phase wraith. There were hundreds of them. "Hassan, Rodriguez, get your teams in here," Kim ordered. "We're burning the nest." The humans set incendiary charges around the chamber. They worked quickly and efficiently. The remaining phase wraiths attacked in waves, trying to protect their nest, but the humans cut them down. Thexalor watched in amazement as these 12 soldiers, these humans that he had called incompetent weeks ago, systematically destroyed an entire infestation that had crippled his colony. "Charges set," Hassan reported. 30 seconds. "Everyone out," Kim ordered. "Move!" They ran from the building. Behind them, fire exploded through the complex. The nest burned with flames that seemed wrong, flames that existed in multiple spectrums at once. The phase wraiths screamed, a sound that echoed across the entire colony. Kim watched the building burn. "That's the main nest. There might be a few stragglers left in the colony, but without a nest to return to, they'll move on or die." Thexalor stared at the flames. 12 humans. 12 humans had accomplished in hours what 3,000 Valdrine couldn't do in weeks. They had seen the invisible. They had fought the impossible. They had won. "How long have humans been fighting these things?" he asked quietly. Kim pulled off her glasses and looked at him. Her eyes were calm. "Centuries, Commander. Maybe longer. We have stories about them in every human culture. Demons, ghosts, shadow people, different names, same creatures. We learned to fight them because we had to. We couldn't pretend they didn't exist just because they were hard to see. She looked back at the burning building. You called us incompetent on Mars. You said we were shooting at ghosts. You were right about the second part. We were shooting at ghosts, but we weren't incompetent. We never are. The report from Keshor Prime spread through the Valdrine Consortium like wildfire. Thexilor filed an official document detailing what had happened. He described the phase wraiths. He explained how human soldiers had cleared the infestation. He included scanner data, video footage, and his personal testimony. The consortium leadership read it with growing alarm. Then other reports started coming in. A military commander on Breskor Station reported unexplained casualties over the past 6 months. When human advisors reviewed the data, they identified phase wraith attack patterns. A colony administrator on Nexhem 4 mentioned equipment failures and disappearances that had been attributed to accidents. Human analysts recognized the signs of an active infestation. A mining operation on Valdros 2 had lost 37 workers to what they called the curse of the deep tunnels. Human experts confirmed it was a phase wraith hunting ground. Within a week, 17 Valdrine colonies reported signs of infestation. The number kept growing. 23, 30, 41. Every time Valdrine officials reviewed their historical records looking for similar incidents, they found more evidence. Mysterious deaths, unexplained disappearances, equipment failures that made no sense, colonies abandoned for reasons no one could quite remember. The creatures had been hunting Valdrine for decades, maybe centuries. No one knew how long because no one had been looking. The Valdrine had been prey all along, and they had never realized it. The Consortium Council met in emergency session. Representatives from every major colony attended, their faces grim. The humans had been right. The galaxy had threats that most species couldn't even perceive. And now the Valdrine faced an enemy that might have already infiltrated hundreds of their worlds. "How is this possible?" demanded Council Leader Vexthara. "How could our sensors miss these creatures? How could our security forces fail to detect them?" Captain Rivera attended the meeting as Earth's representative. She stood before the Council and explained patiently. "Your sensors work perfectly, Council Leader. They detect everything in the spectrums you program them to scan. The problem is that phase wraiths exist primarily in spectrums most species don't naturally perceive. You never scan for them because you never knew they existed. You can't look for something you don't know is there." "But humans can see them," another council member said. "Why? What makes your species different?" "Human eyes evolved to see into the lower infrared and upper ultraviolet ranges," Rivera explained. "It gave our ancestors a survival advantage. We could see prey and predators in lighting conditions where other animals were blind. That same adaptation lets us see phase wraiths. It's not special technology or advanced science, it's just biology." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Their entire civilization, their advanced technology, their superior military forces, all of it was useless against an enemy that humans could see naturally. The primitives they had rejected were the only ones who could save them. "How many phase wraiths are in our territory?" Vexthara asked. Rivera consulted her datapad. "We don't have exact numbers yet, but based on the pattern of infestations, we estimate thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They breed quickly once they establish a nest. One breeding pair can produce 50 offspring in a year, and they've had years, possibly decades, to spread through your colonies." The council chamber fell silent. Thousands of invisible predators hunting their people, breeding in the shadows. It was a nightmare. "What do you recommend?" Vexthara asked quietly. "Earth is willing to help. We can send tactical teams to every infected colony. We can train your soldiers to recognize the signs of infestation, even if they can't see the creatures directly." We can provide sensor technology tuned to the spectrums where phase wraiths exist. But this is going to take time and resources. You're looking at a multi-year campaign to clear your territory. And the cost? Rivera met the council leader's eyes. We're not asking for payment, if that's what you mean. We're asking for cooperation. Let us help you. Let us show you how to fight this threat. And in return, acknowledge that humanity has been fighting battles like this for a very long time. Thexilor attended the meeting as a military advisor. He stood and addressed the council. I have seen human soldiers fight these creatures. I watched 12 humans clear an infestation that crippled an entire colony. They were efficient, professional, and effective. Without them, Keshor Prime would have been lost. We have no choice but to accept their help. The council voted to accept Earth's offer. Within days, human tactical teams deployed across Valdrine space. Transport ships carried hundreds of specialists to infected worlds. Each team brought weapons, sensors, and most importantly, knowledge. Thexilor requested to work directly with Commander Chen. After the Keshor Prime incident, he felt he owed the human commander an apology. Chen arrived with his command staff and established a joint operations center on the Valdrine capital world. Commander Chen, Thexilor said when they met, I must apologize for my behavior during the Mars exercises. I was arrogant and dismissive. I failed to understand what your soldiers were doing. Chen shook his head. No apology necessary, Commander. You saw what you were trained to see. Your sensors detected what they were built to detect. It's not your fault that phase wraiths exist outside your perceptual range. Still, I called your people incompetent. I mocked your aim. I recommended that Earth be denied coalition membership. Yes, you did. Chen smiled slightly. But now you understand. My soldiers weren't missing. They were shooting at targets you couldn't see. They never miss, Commander. We've been fighting these things for too long to miss. They worked together over the following weeks. Chen explained phase wraith behavior patterns. He showed Thexilor how to identify nest locations by studying disappearance patterns. He taught Valdrine commanders how to coordinate with human tactical teams, even when they couldn't see what the humans were shooting at. It was humbling work for Thexilor. He had to trust the humans completely. He had to believe they were fighting real threats, even when every Valdrine sensor showed empty space. He had to accept that his people were helpless against an enemy that humans could see clearly. But he learned, and he taught other Valdrine commanders. Slowly, the Valdrine military adapted to this new reality. They couldn't see phase wraiths, but they could learn to fight alongside those who could. The campaign to clear Valdrine space took months. Each colony required careful attention. Some infestations were small, just a few creatures that could be eliminated quickly. Others were massive, with hundreds of phase wraiths entrenched in deep nests. The worst was a mining colony where the creatures had infiltrated the underground tunnels. It took 3 weeks of continuous fighting to clear them out. Human casualties were surprisingly low. The soldiers knew what they were doing. They had tactics refined over centuries. They understood phase wraith psychology. They knew when to push and when to fall back. They fought with the confidence of veterans who had seen this enemy 1,000 times before. Valdrine casualties were higher, but mostly because soldiers would panic when they saw their human comrades firing at empty air. Training helped. Eventually, Valdrine soldiers learned to trust what humans told them. If a human soldier said there was a phase wraith at a certain location, Valdrine soldiers would fire there without question. Blind trust, literally, but it worked. Thexilor accompanied Chen on several operations. He watched humans clear nests, eliminate stragglers, and secure colonies. Each time he was amazed by their efficiency. These weren't the incompetent primitives he had observed on Mars. These were experienced warriors fighting a familiar enemy. One night, after a particularly difficult operation, Thexilor and Chen sat together in a command tent. Outside, human and Valdrine soldiers worked side by side, securing the perimeter. How did you know? Thexilor asked. On Mars. How did you know that phase wraiths were watching the exercise? Chen sipped his coffee. We detected the signs 3 days before your arrival. Cold spots in heated areas, equipment moving at night, shadows that didn't match light sources, standard phase wraith behavior. We could have cleared them out, but then you would have arrived and judged our military based on standard exercises. You would have seen competent soldiers and possibly accepted us into the coalition. But you wanted us to see you shooting at empty space. Yes, because we knew what would happen next. Phase wraiths are curious about new species. They would follow you home. They would investigate Valdrine colonies. And when they did, you would learn that they existed. You would learn the hard way. Thexilor felt cold. You knew this would happen? You knew my people would suffer? Chen met his eyes. We knew phase wraiths would attack your colonies eventually. They've been in this sector for years. We've been tracking their spread. We tried to warn the Coalition Council 5 years ago. We sent reports about extra-spectrum threats. We offered to share our knowledge. The Council dismissed our reports as primitive superstition. They said humans were too unsophisticated to understand advanced sensor technology. So you let us discover the truth ourselves. We gave you the information you needed. We told you where to scan. We explained what to look for. But yes, we let you face the consequences of your own blindness. Sometimes people need to see the monster themselves before they believe it exists. Thexilor was quiet for a long time. That was cruel. That was necessary, Chen corrected. If we had explained the threat before you could see it, you would have laughed at us. You did laugh at us, remember? On Mars, you called us incompetent because we were shooting at ghosts. Would you have believed us if we had told you those ghosts were real? Thexilor had no answer. Chen was right. The Valdrine would never have believed in phase wraiths until they experienced them directly. Sometimes the only way to teach someone was to let them learn through experience. How many other threats are out there? Thexilor asked. How many other invisible enemies are hunting the galaxy? Chen smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Phase wraiths are just one species, Commander. There are others, things that exist in different spectrums, things that hide in plain sight, things that prey on species too advanced to believe in monsters. And humans fight all of them? We do our best. We've been doing it for thousands of years, long before we reached space, long before we met other species. We learned early that the universe has dangers that can't always be seen or measured. We learned to trust our instincts. We learned to shoot at shadows when the shadows moved wrong. Thexilor looked out at the night sky. Somewhere out there, invisible threats hunted in the darkness, and humanity stood guard, fighting battles that no one else even knew were happening. The coalition was wrong to reject you, he said quietly. Yes, Chen agreed. They were. But they'll understand soon enough. Everyone does eventually, usually right after something invisible tries to kill them. 6 months after the phase wraith crisis began, the Galactic Defense Coalition convened at its headquarters station. Representatives from 43 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings of all sizes and environmental needs. The air shimmered with translation fields, allowing everyone to communicate despite speaking hundreds of different languages. The emergency session had one topic on its agenda: the phase wraith threat and humanity's response to it. Commander Chen stood before the assembly as Earth's representative. Beside him stood Thexilor, who had requested to present the Valdrine perspective. Around the hall, delegates whispered and murmured. Many species were hearing about phase wraiths for the first time. Others had already discovered their own infestations. The coalition chair, a massive being from the Cathek species, called the session to order. We are here to discuss the recent revelation of hostile entities called phase wraiths and humanity's role in combating them. Commander Thexilor of the Valdrine Consortium has requested to speak first. Thexilor stepped forward. His voice carried through the translation fields to every being in the chamber. 6 months ago, I stood on Mars and rejected humanity's application to join this coalition. I called their soldiers incompetent. I mocked their aim. I filed a report stating that humans lack basic military discipline. Today, I stand before you to say that I was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing the phase wraith infestation of Keshor Prime. The assembly watched as the data scrolled past. Disappearances, deaths, the invisible threat that had crippled an entire colony. My people were being hunted by an enemy we could not see, Texelor continued. Our sensors detected nothing. Our weapons could not target what we could not perceive. We were helpless. Then humanity intervened. 12 human soldiers cleared an infestation that 3,000 Valdrine troops could not touch. They saw what we could not see. They fought what we could not fight. They saved my world. He paused, letting the images sink in. Since then, we have discovered phase wraith infestations on 41 Valdrine colonies. Human tactical teams have deployed to every one. They have trained our forces, shared their knowledge, and fought alongside us. They have asked for no payment, no territory, no concessions. They helped us because it was the right thing to do. Thexelor turned to look at Chen. On Mars, I watched humans fire at empty space. I thought they were missing their targets. I was right about one thing. They were shooting at something I couldn't see, but they were not missing. Humans never miss. They were engaging hostile entities that existed outside my perceptual range. They were fighting a battle I didn't even know was happening. He faced the assembly again. I formally nominate humanity for immediate membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. Not as junior members, not as probationary additions, as full members with all rights and privileges. They have earned it 1,000 times over. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some delegates agreed immediately, others had questions. A few remained skeptical. The coalition chair called for silence. Commander Chen, the chair said, please present humanity's position. Chen stepped forward. He carried himself with quiet confidence, a stark contrast to the towering aliens around him. But his voice was steady and clear. Thank you, Chair. I will be direct. Humanity has been fighting phase wraiths for thousands of years. They are not a new threat to us. They are an old enemy that we know well. Every human culture has stories about them. We called them demons, ghosts, shadow people, and 100 other names. Different words for the same creatures. He activated his own display. It showed human history, art, and records dating back millennia. Cave paintings depicting strange, shadowy figures. Medieval manuscripts describing invisible demons. Modern photographs with odd distortions that matched phase wraith signatures. We learned to fight them because we had no choice, Chen continued. Humans can see into spectrums that most species cannot. We perceive the lower infrared and upper ultraviolet ranges naturally. This biological quirk means we can see phase wraiths when other species cannot. So we developed weapons, tactics, and strategies to combat them. A delegate from the Nexian Assembly raised a tentacle. Why did humanity not inform the coalition of this threat earlier? We have been in contact for 6 years. Chen nodded. We tried. 5 years ago, Earth sent comprehensive reports to the Coalition Council about extra-spectrum threats. We detailed phase wraiths, their behavior patterns, and our recommended countermeasures. The Council dismissed our reports as primitive superstition. We were told that our sensors were inadequate and our understanding of science was too limited to be taken seriously. Murmurs spread through the assembly. The chair checked the records. This is confirmed. Earth did submit such reports. They were classified as unverified claims from developing species and filed without action. We could have pushed harder, Chen admitted, but we understood the position we were in. We were new to galactic society. We had no credibility. No one would believe that primitive humans could detect threats that advanced species missed. So we continued to monitor the situation and fight phase wraiths when we found them. Why are you telling us this now? Another delegate asked. Because the threat is spreading. Phase wraiths have been moving into new sectors for decades. The Valdrine infestation was just the most visible. We've now confirmed phase wraith activity on colonies belonging to 7 different coalition species. The problem is larger than anyone realized. Chen pulled up a star chart. Red markers indicated confirmed infestations. Yellow markers showed suspected activity. The map was covered in hundreds of markers. The assembly fell silent. This is the scope of the phase wraith threat, Chen said quietly. They've been hunting galactic species for possibly centuries. Most of you attributed the casualties to accidents, equipment failures, or unexplained disappearances. You never connected the incidents because you couldn't see the cause. But humans can see them. We've been tracking their spread and fighting them where we can. But there are billions of beings in the galaxy, and only a few million humans trained for this work. We need help. What kind of help? The chair asked. Chen straightened. Earth proposes the formation of a joint task force dedicated to combating extra-spectrum threats. Human personnel would lead operations and provide training. Coalition species would provide resources, logistics, and support. Together we can eliminate phase wraiths from settled space and establish early warning systems to prevent future infestations. He paused, then added, "But we need the coalition's trust. We need you to believe us when we tell you there's a threat, even if your sensors can't confirm it. We need you to let us shoot at empty space without calling us incompetent." Several delegates made sounds that the translators interpreted as laughter. But it was understanding laughter, not mockery. "I have a question," a delegate from the Syrian Compact said. "Are phase wraiths the only extra-spectrum threat humanity has encountered?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head. "No, they are not." The assembly went silent again. Every delegate leaned forward. "Phase wraiths are just one species," Chen continued. "There are others, things that exist in different dimensions, things that hide in electromagnetic fields, things that feed on radiation or exist as patterns in quantum foam. Most species never encounter them because they can't perceive them, but humans have broader sensory ranges than most species realize. We see more, we hear more, we sense more, and that means we encounter things that others miss." "How many other threats?" the chair demanded. "We've cataloged 14 distinct species of extraspectrum entities. 8 are relatively harmless. 3 are dangerous but rare. 2 are as dangerous as phase wraiths but less common. And 1," Chen paused, "1 is worse, much worse. But it's not active in coalition space yet, and I pray it never will be." The assembly erupted in questions and exclamations. The chair called for order. It took several minutes to restore calm. "Commander Chen," the chair said formally, "I believe I speak for the entire coalition when I say that we have underestimated humanity. Your species has been fighting battles we didn't even know existed. You have protected us while we mocked you. That ends today." The chair turned to the assembly. "I call for an immediate vote on 2 measures. First, humanity's admission to the Galactic Defense Coalition as full members. Second, the formation of the Extra-Spectrum Threat Response Force under Joint Human Coalition Command. All in favor?" The vote was unanimous. Every single delegate approved both measures. Earth was officially a member of the coalition. The new task force was established with humanity leading operations. After the session ended, Thexilor approached Chen privately. "You said there was something worse than phase wraiths. What is it?" Chen looked at the Valdrine commander for a long moment. "Something we call the Void Singers. They exist in the space between dimensions. They're intelligent, organized, and they hunt civilizations, not individuals. We've only encountered them twice in human history. Both times we barely survived." "Are they in this galaxy?" "We don't know. We haven't detected any signs of them in coalition space. But phase wraiths tend to avoid areas where void singers are active. They're prey for them, just like we are. So the fact that phase wraiths are spreading into coalition space might be a good sign. It might mean the Void Singers are far away. Might? Chen smiled grimly. Humans have learned not to make assumptions about what we can't see. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It's kept us alive this long. Thexilor was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, when you shot at empty space on Mars, was that just phase wraiths, or were you testing for something else? Both. We were clearing phase wraith scouts, but we were also demonstrating that humans fight threats most species can't perceive. We wanted the coalition to see us shooting at nothing so that when the truth came out, you would understand. You would remember that we tried to show you. That was calculated. That was necessary. Sometimes you can't just tell people the truth. You have to show them. You have to let them experience it themselves. Thexilor nodded slowly. You knew we would reject your application. You knew we would mock you, and you let it happen anyway. Yes, because we knew what would come next. We knew the phase wraiths would follow you home. We knew you would discover the truth, and we knew that when you did, you would understand what humanity has been doing all along. Fighting wars no one else can see. Exactly. They stood together, looking out at the stars through the observation window. Somewhere out there, invisible threats moved through the darkness. Things that hunted in spectrums most species couldn't perceive. Things that had fed on galactic civilization for centuries without anyone knowing. But humanity knew. Humanity had always known. And now, finally, the galaxy believed them. Welcome to the Coalition, Commander Chen, Thexilor said quietly. Chen smiled. Thank you, Commander. Now the real work begins. We have a lot of space to clear and a lot of species to protect. But at least we won't be doing it alone anymore. No, Thexilor agreed. You won't be alone. The Valdrines stand with you. The Coalition stands with you. From now on, when humanity shoots at empty space, we'll trust that you're aiming at something real. We appreciate that, because we are aiming at something real. We always have been. Chen looked out at the stars. The galaxy is more dangerous than most species realize. There are threats in the darkness that can't be measured with sensors or detected with scans. Things that exist just beyond the edge of perception. Things that hunt the unwary. He turned to Thexilor. But here's what the galaxy needs to understand. Those things aren't hunting anymore. Because now they have something they've never had before. They have an enemy that can see them. They have hunters who won't stop until every last one of them is gone. They have humanity. Thexilor thought about the phase wraith nest burning on Keshor Prime. He thought about human soldiers fighting invisible enemies with calm efficiency. He thought about centuries of human warfare against threats no one else believed existed. I almost feel sorry for them, he said. Chen's smile was cold. Don't. They've been feeding on galactic civilization for too long. They've killed billions without anyone knowing. They've hidden in the shadows, thinking they were safe because no one could see them. He looked directly at Thexilor. But humans can see them, and humans never miss. Not on Mars, not on Keshor Prime, not anywhere. When we shoot at empty space, we're not missing. We're fighting a war the galaxy didn't even know existed. But now you know. Now everyone knows. And the galaxy is safer for it, Thexilor said. Yes, it is. And it will be even safer when we're done. Because humanity doesn't give up. We don't surrender. And we don't stop hunting until the threat is eliminated. We've been doing this for thousands of years. We'll keep doing it for thousands more. They stood in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, phase wraiths fled before advancing human forces. Somewhere out there, other extra-spectrum threats learned that the galaxy had new guardians. Guardians who could see them. Guardians who would never stop hunting them. Humanity had finally taken its place in the galactic community. Not as primitives, not as newcomers, but as the species that had been protecting the galaxy all along. fighting battles no one else even knew were happening. The aliens had mocked their aim, not realizing humans were shooting at something they couldn't see. Now the galaxy understood, and now the real work of clearing the darkness could begin.